We're learning the second Sikha on Parshas Vayeilech and Chelek Chavdalid on page 207. The shir today is being learned Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. Eine von den Mitzvahs, was jeden sind in Stave geworden, beim Seif von die Arbaim Shana. One of the mitzvahs that Yidden were commanded at the end of the 40 years when they were in the Midbar, v'samoch mamish akapanim liyoin p'tiras Moshe, right before, or at least the day of Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, is the mitzvah from Ksiva Sefer Torah, is the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah. We learned up dem pasuk, from dem pasuk, as we learn from the pasuk where it says, Va'ata kisvu lachem es ashira azais, and you should write this shira, which literally means a song, but it refers to all of Torah, as mitzvah sasei al kol ish ve'ish mi Yisrael, there's a mitzvah upon every Yid, lichtoiv Sefer Torah la'atzmai, to write a Sefer Torah for himself. Now, vibalt as the tzivui ve'ato kisvu lachem es ashira geimer, when it says in the pasuk, and now you should write the Sefer Torah, is gekommen als a hachane zu the Knisa Loretz. It's coming as a preparation entering into Eretz Yisrael. As the pasuk afterwards says, Ki avienu el adama goyme v'onsa shir azayis goyme, you'll come into the land and you'll be able to have the Sefer Torah to learn from it. Is move on, as jeder Yid hat gleich va'ata gedarf nekayim sein ot dem tzivui and schreiben a Sefer Torah la'atzmai. So if so, it's understood that immediately every Yid had the mitzvah to write this Sefer Torah, to have a Sefer Torah for himself, to learn from. Is tamua, so if so, it's very difficult to understand. Der Tzivui va'ata kisvu geimer is given und gesagt geworden zu Yidden b'yoyim petiras Moshe zayin nada. Yidden received the command, or they got the mitzvah, to write a Sefer Torah on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, on the 7th of Adar. Und man gefindt nicht, as soll demand werden, b'shum mokim, we don't find it mentioned anywhere, as in ein tag, that in this one day, soll mehr wie shishim riba Yidden, that more than 600,000 Yidden sich mishtadel sein, zu ma'abed sein eures v'chulu, that they should make an effort to prepare and take the hides of an animal and to turn it into parchment, und schreiben, and to write, or al kapanim aneben b'ksivis mashuhu von a Sefer Torah, or to begin the writing of a Sefer Torah. If they had that mitzvah, and it was va'ata now, before they entered into Eretz Yisrael, why do we not find that this was fulfilled? If this were to happen, this would be something that's even greater than what happened when Yidden all came to Har Sinai, and they all camped there together with one heart, and that itself was something novel, which the Torah mentions and says explicitly. Da is a sanasiya achas. Here, if all Yidden on the very same day are taking action together and writing a Sefer Torah, this should have been mentioned somewhere. Neisif of them, in addition to the fact, was Yidden seine gewend von Nummi mit Evle shel Moshe shleishim yoyim, that afterwards Yidden were occupied with mourning of the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu for 30 days, and they didn't have the possibility to then write a Sefer Torah. Und danach, Ba'asiri b'Nissen, and then on the 10th of Nisan, then the Yidden aribir und ba'agdomas kama achonos ozedem yarde. On the 10th of Nisan, the Yidden, by certain preparations, as is described, they entered into Eretz Yisrael. And then to point out something else here about writing a Sefer Torah, as kedei zu schreiben, as so viel Sefer Torah, mehr wie shishim ribai, to write such a great number of Sefer Torah, more than 600,000, muss man haben a ribui atzum von Yiriyas shel klaf. You have to have a tremendous amount of parchment, was muss sein min amuta beficha, and it has to come from an animal, from a kosher animal. You have to have ink and other things needed for the writing of the Sefer Torah. Was die Zugreitung von die alle Sachen ist verbunden mit gar asach Zeit des Askes v'chulu. Preparing all of this takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and so on. Und dazu ist euch nicht mistave zu sagen, and it's also not logical to say, as jeder einer hat gekannt allein schreiben a Sefer Torah, that every Yid individually was able to write his own Sefer Torah. Wie wir sehen, heint bemuchisch, as we see today, very simply, as blois amiyad zenen muchsher und zenen und sefer zu schreiben a Sefer Torah. There's only a minority of people that are able to write a Sefer Torah, as a scribe can write the letters properly of a Sefer Torah. Und befragt, and especially that it should be written properly, that it should be a beautiful Sefer Torah, beklaf, with beautiful parchment, yoy, proper ink, kulmis, the ksavna, and the quill, and the beautiful writing. Is doch melachatchile, und benegei ribi anoshim gemeint nar al yedei shliach. So regarding many or most people, this would only be possible by hiring a shliach, someone, a scribe, to write a Sefer Torah for you. So this would be a tremendous effort and even miracle that there should be enough seifrim that should be able to write a Sefer Torah with all the preparations needed for all Yidden at that time. Al derech hanal, similar to the question asked here regarding all of Klal Yisrael that had this mitzvah, is oich di shaila. There's also a question in them was Chazal Zogen regarding this, that it says in the Medrash, as b'yoyim b'tirasai, that on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, had Moshe Rabbeinu geschrieben Yud Gimel Teiris. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote 13 Sefer Teiris, Yud Beis Yud Beis Shvatim, 12 Teiris for the 12 tribes, va'achas yiniach ba'aron, and then one more he wrote and placed into the Aron. So on this as well, seemingly the question is, wie ist es möglich zu schreiben Yud Gimel Sifrei Torah b'yom echad? How is it possible to write 13 Sifrei Torah in one day? So here the commentaries explain what happened. As man hat jedem Tag nur verendigt zu schreiben die Sifrei Torah. On this day, the 13 Torahs were completed. Varim b'chlal, because in general, is kol ma sheshama b'yom echad kosav, everything that Moshe Rabbeinu heard on any day when they were in the Midbar, so he wrote it down immediately. V'chein b'chol yom, every day. So all that was missing to complete the Sefer Torah was to finish the last parshas that were said on that day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. So we can add, after everything was written, so then to add everything that was said in the parshas from Nitzavim and going forward, that was said on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. As geschehen wie Moshe gefindt men, as geschehen wie men gefindt, as Moshe had geschrieben, vayomas Moshe al shema asid. Just like it says in the Gemara that Moshe Rabbeinu, according to one opinion, wrote all of the psukim of the Torah until the end, including the words of vayomas Moshe, where it speaks about his passing. And he wrote it al Shem ha'asid. That's seemingly the pshat here, that he wrote it because of the future of what will happen. Hat gekent schreiben, die Sedres Hanal al kapanim rubam in the Yamim shalifnei eslakusai. So we can even say that even these parshas that were said today, but it was still written in advance. It wasn't all written on the day that he passed away. It was written in advance before it was said. Chotches ist verstandig, als wir können sagen, als hat sie gesagt zu Yidden, lufnei yom eslakusai. Although, as understood, he didn't say what it says in these parshas until that day came on the day that he passed away, but he wrote it in advance. So therefore, he was able to complete the 13 Sifrei Torah on the day that he passed away. So similar, we would be able to answer and explain regarding the mitzvah that all Yidden have to write a Sefer Torah. Leut wie der Rambam is metayer dem Seder alimot von Yidden im Midbar. Based on the Rambam in his Akdame, as he explains, what was the order of how Yidden were learning when they were in the Midbar. As nachdem, wie sie haben gehört die Mitzvah v'hilchiseh von Moshe v'Aaron chulu, after all Yidden heard the mitzvahs and all of its halachas from Moshe and Aaron, haben sie verschrieben, ha-mitzvah hi b'megillas. They immediately wrote it down in scrolls, from welche sie pflegen danach lernen, that was used later to learn from it. So komtais, if so comes out, as b'meshach di mem shana b'midbar, for the duration of the 40 years in the Midbar, they already had written the overwhelming majority of the parshas of the Torah. All that was missing was to add and to finish the last parshas that was said on that day when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. If so, we can say, as noch in Sivui, that after the mitzvah to write a Sefer Torah, hat jeder Yid nor Messiah gewähnt die Ksive von sein Sefer Torah. All he had to do is complete the last parshas, the writing of his Sefer Torah. So it's not so difficult to understand how this was possible, and it's not something that's ever mentioned anywhere explicitly, because it's not something that's totally out of the ordinary. That would be seemingly an answer of what happened here. However, the Rebbe does not accept this. This is it's very difficult to accept this, while for a number of reasons. Aleph, number one, that teretz kemen sagen nor liten man da amar as teire megillah nitna. This is an answer that is true only according to the opinion that says that the Torah was given to the Yidden one scroll at a time, meaning that it was the mitzvahs were said and it was written on a scroll, and then later they attached it all together. Other, or alternatively, there's another opinion, even according to the opinion that says Torah chasuma nitna, that the Torah was given all closed, which simply would sound like that the Yidden did not write it along the years of the 40 years they were in the Midbar, but they all wrote it at the end of the 40 years. So in that case, you have to say that they all wrote the full Sefer Torah on this day when they got the mitzvah. But Kipirish HaTosfos, we can explain this according to what Tosfos says, that even according to this opinion, they were writing the parshas of the Sefer Torah on scrolls during the 40 years. So what does it mean when it says Chasuma Nitna? All it means is, as the Smein Shala Seder Nichtava, that what they wrote was written in the order, the way it should appear in the Torah. And the Rabbi explains here in the brackets what this means. This hey Stala Seder v'zekumen in Torah, in the order of the way it appears in Torah. V'balt as ein muktem u'molcha b'Torah, since as we know that the parashas in Torah are not written in the chronological order that it was actually said. There are certain parashas in the Torah that was said before those parashas that are actually written in the Torah before them. So when they were writing the Sefer Torah during the 40 years, so since they knew that there's going to be another parsha said later that is going to have to be written before, so they waited with writing this parsha. So they waited with writing these parshas, until they heard the later parshas, which then have to be written before. And then they were able to write everything in order once they heard the later parshas. So according to Tosfos, both opinions say that the Yidden were writing everything they heard from Moshe Rabbeinu during the 40 years. The opinion that says Megillah Nitna, they heard it and they wrote it immediately, even if it was out of order. The opinion that says Chasuma Nitna means that they waited to write it in order, but it was already written before. So according to this, we could understand that when it came to completing the Sefer Torah on the last day, they had very little to write. However, this is not an answer, loit Rashi. According to Rashi's explanation, versus Mefarish, and he explains, as Chasuma Nitna meant, Chasuma means literally, le nichtava at seif mem. They did not write any of the mitzvahs that Moshe Rabbeinu told them, any part of the Torah, until the end of 40 years. Only when all of the parashas of all the mitzvahs was set to Yidden, then it was Chasuma, it was completed. That's when they wrote the Torah. So therefore the question comes back, how are they able to write a whole Torah on the day Moshe Rabbeinu passes away? Another point here is, in general, it needs to be analyzed here, because the Rambam means to sagen as kol echad ve'echad mi Yisrael. Does the Rambam actually mean that every single one of Yidden, yeder bar chiyuva, anyone that is above the age of bar mitzvah and he has the obligation to write a Torah, flecht allein schreiben b'megillis ala parshas Torah, would write himself in a scroll all of the parshas b'meshach li'abar mishana for the 40 years that Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching them. Befrat, and especially as a Chelek Gadol, from die welche sind in Eretz Yisrael, a very big portion of Klal Yisrael that entered into Eretz Yisrael, sind geboren geworden in Midbar. They were only born later at a certain point in the Midbar, so they couldn't have written the parashas along the way because they weren't even born yet. So this is not an answer for many of the Yidden, if maybe even the majority of Yidden, that actually did not write the Torah on scrolls during the 40 years. Gimel, the third point here is Ve'ikir, and this is the main point. B'divrei Chazal gefindt men no kanal as Moshe had geschrieben Yud Gimel Sifrei Torah. In the words of Chazal, we only find regarding Moshe Rabbeinu that he wrote 13 Sifrei Torah. Oib yeda bar chiyuv shebayis sedeh hat noch ein Sivi v'ata kisvel lechem gein geschrieben as Sifrei Torah la'atzmai. If it's actually true that every single Yid that's above the age of Bar Mitzvah wrote a Sefer Torah for himself on this day, or he completed a Sefer Torah from before on this day, this is still something that should have been mentioned somewhere in Chazal that this happened. Von dem was Chazal reden nur wegen der Yud Gimel Sifrei Torah. From the fact that in the Medrash it only speaks about 13 Sifrei Torah written on this day, is mashma it seems as es nit gewend der Chidush Achi Gadol, that this great novelty did not happen, as damals eine verendet geworden mehr wie samich ribei Sifrei Torah oder a viele angeheben geschrieben werden. That it was completed to write 600,000 Sifrei Torah, or at least the beginning of writing of 600,000 Sifrei Torah. This is not mentioned anywhere in Chazal, and therefore it seems like it didn't happen. So the question is, why did Yidden not fulfill the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah, as it says in the pasuk, Va'ata kisvulechem, that they should write it now before they enter into Eretz Yisrael? So to understand this, let's first discuss the famous question regarding the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah. Wie bald says a mitzvah say, I'll call ish ve'ishmi Yisrael, lichtov Sefer Torah la'atzmai. Since it is a mitzvah on every single Yid to write a Sefer Torah, favos zet men it, as Yidden bechlal, kame v'kame gedei Yisrael befrat, sollen das mekayim sein bepoil. So why don't we see that all Yidden, and especially from those gedei Yisrael, that they should actually fulfill this mitzvah? Besamach zum zman achiyah v'mitzvahs, and this should be fulfilled right after one becomes bar mitzvah, unabhängig von der mitzvah tam von mitzvahs kisvulechem v'lamda. Beginning with the reason for this mitzvah, the point is that you should have a Sefer Torah to learn with it. So that's the time when a person becomes bar mitzvah, and he has to fulfill a mitzvah, to write a Sefer Torah, and then learn from it. Why don't we find that this is a mitzvah that should be fulfilled by all Yidden? So at first glance, the reason for this would be as follows. Es steht in Rosh, on Azay is the halacha. The Rosh says, and this is brought the halacha in Shulchan Aruch as well, as idna today, shekaisim Sefer Torah, that the Sefer Torah that we write, what do we do with it? Umanicha noisa bebatik nesiya is likris by berabim, and the Sefer Torah is only used when we read from it on Shabbos or Yom Tov or on Monday or Thursday. So mitzvah sasehi al kol ishmi Yisrael. Today, the fulfillment of the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah applies to something else, and that is lichtov chumshei Torah, to write a chumash to learn from that you have available in your house, u'mishneh gemara, to write the Mishnah and the Gemara, Pirusha, and all the commentaries. Legos behen, to study and learn in it. Hu ubanov, you and your children. Ki mitzvahs, ksivas hatayre, hilumid ba. The mitzvah is to learn from it. Heim asvarim she'adam mitzvah l'kaisvam. This is the mitzvah that, and those are the svarim that a person is obligated today to write them. Ukipsak hashach, and as the shach also rules regarding this, as a idna is the mitzvah sasei nema dafke beilu, that now that the Sefer Torah is kept only for learning from it, reading from it on a Shabbos, Yom Tov, and so on. So today, the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah is dafke, specifically with writing svarim that we learn from, v'loy b'Sefer Torah. The mitzvah is not regarding writing a Sefer Torah. That's the Shach's opinion. When it comes to svarim that are rather handwritten or printed svarim, is doch kama v'kama, many, afilu von divas then an erst rein gil bar mitzvah, even those that just become bar mitzvah, kaufen svarim, if zu lernen and say, they buy svarim in order to learn from it. On azayadom is a demit, yaitze the mitzvah von kisvulechem. And with this, you can fulfill the mitzvah of writing svarim, which refers to svarim that you learn from, and this is fulfilled by buying svarim. Now, in Afapi, as the Ramah paskind, but the Ramah does say about this, that if you buy a sefer as is, printed or written, and you didn't read and proofread it to see if it's written or printed properly, this is like grabbing a mitzvah from the market when it was really written by someone else, and you're not yotze just by buying. And according to all opinions, even those that argue with the Ramah, is this nit ken kiyum mitzvah kedabay. This is not the best way of fulfilling the mitzvah by just buying printed svarim. So if so, this mitzvah is not being fulfilled just by buying svarim. However, is there din anal in Ramah gesagt geworden nor benegeyat sa sefer Torah? What the Ramah is saying is only regarding fulfilling the mitzvah by buying a sefer Torah. Because by Sefer Torah is faran achiyuv from ksiva. When it comes to the Sefer Torah, there the obligation is the writing of the Sefer Torah. Which is not the case if we're following the opinion of the Rosh and according to the Shach, that today, when we fulfill the mitzvah with all svarim, is eich the Ramah Maide. In this case, even the Ramah agrees, as mizyaitze, the mitzvah durch kaufen svarim, that you fulfill the mitzvah by buying the svarim. This was already explained once at length in a Sicha and Chelek of Gimel, where there the Rebbe explains this distinction according to the opinion of the Ramah. So if so, here we have our answer. That's why people do not make an effort to fulfill the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah, because according to the Rosh and the Shach, today the mitzvah is fulfilled specifically with buying Sfarim, or writing, or even buying svarim, and therefore it's fulfilled by everybody. Aber in Emerson is das nit kein teretz maspik. However, the truth is that this is not a sufficient answer. Warum? Because we don't find anywhere. And we don't see it in practice. As jeder bar mitzvah soll takef v'evert bar mitzvah, that one that becomes bar mitzvah should immediately, when he becomes a bar mitzvah, schreiben to write, oder al kaponim magia sein, or even to just proofread, other liknei svarim, al pi mashin espoir b'seif sifa kaidem, or at least to make an effort to immediately buy svarim. Obemele haben svarim biz ashulchan aruch, and to have the svarim that are necessary to learn from, which is all the way including a shulchan aruch that you have to actually learn from to know the halachas to fulfill. Takef v'nevert mechuyev in v'lamda. As soon as he becomes obligated in the mitzvah of learning from the svarim, which is right at his bar mitzvah. So we don't find in practice that people are medayik that every bar mitzvah bacher should go and immediately buy the svarim that he needs in order to be able to learn from it, which includes all the way till the Shulchan Aruch. Additionally, there are other poskim that disagree with the opinion of the Shach. Koil dem Bis Yosef, Bach, and dem Taz. These poskim here. And this also includes other poskim following later after the Shach. They, according to their opinion, is the Rosh nit eisen zum mevatl sein the mitzvah von ksivas sefer Torah kipshuta. When the Rosh says that today we fulfill the mitzvah by buying svarim, since that's what we primarily learn from, the Rosh is not coming to nullify the original mitzvah of writing a sefer Torah. Now I made zum meisav sein. The Rosh was adding, as a idna today is zugekommen nach achiv. There's an additional obligation that is added to this mitzvah. Lichtov chumshe Torah or mishnah gemara pirusha. Besides writing a sefer Torah, the way the mitzvah is originally, because today we learn primarily from svarim, so today the mitzvah includes also to write a chumash, a mishnah, gemara, and so on. So if so, according to these opinions, you're not fulfilling it by just writing or buying svarim. If this is the case, is the tmiya hanal b'mkoymay medes. The question here remains in place. How is it possible? Many of the great people amongst Yidden that were definitely very careful and scrupulous regarding fulfilling a mitzvah. And to do it in the best possible way, and to do it according to all opinions, not only the Shach, but the other opinions mentioned here. They did not make any effort to write a sefer Torah, nit ba'atzmam, whether writing it themselves, or through a shliach, by hiring a scribe to write. To write one according to those opinions that say that even today there is a mitzvah to write a sefer Torah in the literal sense. Furthermore, even those people from the Gedolei Yisrael that did write a sefer Torah for themselves, they did not fulfill this right after their bar mitzvah. By the They didn't also do it at their very first opportunity or possibility possible when they could afford it. They did it after many years, after their bar mitzvah, and after they had enough money to do it, but they delayed it. How could they delay this mitzvah if it's a chiyuv on everybody to write a sefer Torah? According to some poskim, it actually means a sefer Torah the way it was always. So therefore, to answer this, we must say, as euch eider, sie haben geschrieben die Sifrei Torah. Even the Gedolei Yisrael that did one day eventually write for themselves the Sefer Torah, but even before they wrote the Sefer Torah, haben sie mekayim given the mitzvah. The mitzvah was already fulfilled. On kahanagosam afilu bedin da achrein v'chayetze bezeh en aneifen von lechatchila behider. And they fulfilled it properly, even following the opinions of the achreinim that every person should write. It was fulfilled fully and 100% behider. Unser spätige Stadlos in Ksifas Sefer Torah, and the fact that they then later made an effort to write a Sefer Torah for themselves, is gewähnt nicht der Fall, was früher hat gefällt, chas v'sholem ki mitzvahs aseh min ha-Torah. It's not because they were lacking the fulfillment of a basic mitzvah, a mitzvah aseh min ha-Torah, nor als an inyan shel tosefes, hidur v'chulu. It was just an added thing, an additional hidur, or anything in that regard, and therefore they went and wrote a Sefer Torah. But the actual fulfillment of the mitzvah, we must say, was already fully fulfilled from the time of their bar mitzvah. So what's the explanation for this? How is the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah fulfilled by all of Klal Yisrael? So we can say that the explanation for this is as follows. It's customary amongst Yidden in all congregations all over in the world. As in Yidden Kehille is Farana Sefer Torah was belongs zum Tzibur. That in every community there's a Sefer Torah that belongs to the people, to the congregation. In Zugab zu dem, in addition to this, was Yechidim schreiben Sefer Torah und seine Meister zu Bote Knesios. In addition to individuals that write their own personal Sefer Torah and then they give it to the shul and they keep it in the Aron Kodesh in the shul, there are those that write it personally, but then they donate it completely to be now it belongs to the shul. And in other cases, it's farana shakal v'tarya. It's a bleiben kinyan shel hayachid. There's a discussion whether it still remains the acquisition in the ownership of the individual, other zever in kinyan shel hatzibur, or it does enter into the ownership of the community. So there's a discussion about that. But here we're not discussing this. Is minig Yisrael, the minig in all communities is as the tzibur nennt ding zusammen a sefer Torah of the ksiva or the knieh von a sefer Torah. Ding da zusammen a sefer. So the minig, the custom is that a community hires a sefer to write or buy a sefer Torah for the community, a communal sefer Torah. Was these sefer Torah zene sicher kinyan hatzibur. These sefer Torah are definitely in the ownership of the community. Und b'meila hat jeder Yid a Chelek in the mitzvah von kisvulechem. And therefore every Yid is taking part in the fulfillment of the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah. So that's the first point to explain this. However, this is not enough because is aber benegayet zu hazach was belangt zu hatzibur. When it comes to any object that's owned by a congregation, by a community, is the chashakl v'tarya. There's a discussion about this. Simeken of them zogin, whether it could be said about this as the yochid als prat hat a egen chelik in them. Whether every individual, as an individual, has a real portion in this. What a matzibur called nehmt nit not atziruf von a riba yechidim. A community, this entity of a community, is not just a combination of many. No, das ist a metzias chadasha. It's a new entity, a community. Was derfar darf sein diese Hiros von Meister Litzibur Yafe Yafe. And therefore, if you're donating something that's private and that belongs to an individual and you want it to become part of the community, it can't just be given over in a way that now it's available for everyone to use and everyone has a part and right in it, but it's going from the entity of an individual and becoming now the acquisition of a new entity, the community, and the individual's ownership is totally relinquished. So, to say that everyone is yotze the mitzvah with writing the Sefer Torah by the fact that they participate in a communal Sefer Torah, but there's no individual ownership here. Furthermore, even if we will conclude that although it's being written by a community, but nevertheless it isn't different than a Sefer Torah that's written in partnership with a few people, and in this case the whole community, and everyone does have a portion in the Sefer Torah. But it's still not sufficient to explain how the mitzvah is fulfilled fully and properly, because halten no berasach achreinim. There are many achreinim that say, as misnit yaitze mit Sefer Torah shel shutfin, you do not have the mitzvah. You're not yaitze the mitzvah when you write with partners the Sefer Torah. No yedere must schreiben a Sefer Torah la'atzmai. Everybody must write his own Sefer Torah. Is the chadra koshil duchte? So the question comes back: Wie kann man yaitze sein the mitzvah von ksiva Sefer Torah mit haben a Chelek and a Sefer Torah shel kohol? How can you fulfill the mitzvah by taking part in a communal Sefer Torah? But this is, though, the point of the answer, that the mitzvah is fulfilled by taking part in the communal Sefer Torah, but now this has to be explained. How can you be yotze the mitzvah by the Sefer Torah shel kohol? So the explanation for this is by esrig uminov. When it comes to the mitzvah of the daled minim, the esrig and the other minim, is there din as miznit yotze b'shutfis, that the esrog and the lulav has to be yours, and you can't even be yaitze if you own it in partnership with someone else. Nor as dav zayin kulay shalai. The dalad minim lakachtem lachem has to be completely yours. Now, not PK, but yet at the same time, as the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch, or in Shulchan Aruch, this is a quote from Shulchan Aruch, is noyegim b'mokim she'ein esrog motzei the custom in a place where you don't have enough and there isn't an esrog available for every individual, that the entire community all pays for and buys one esrog in partnership. How could you be yaitze if you must own the esrog personally? Since it was bought in order for everyone to be yaitze the mitzvah, so then it's as if it was specified that every individual, when he takes the lulav and esrog to do the mitzvah with it, it's being then given to him as a gift, that now he owns it personally, with the condition that he then returns it to the community so that someone else could then take it and fulfill the mitzvah. That's the way it's done with a lulav and esrog in a case where there isn't enough available for everyone to buy their own personal lulav and esrog. Now, so similar, we can say here regarding the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah. Because of the condition of Yidden, that people are not rich enough to write their own Sefer Torah, is a Yetze the mit, was the call, schreibt a Sefer Torah zusammen. You can be Yetze the mitzvah by the fact that the community is writing a Sefer Torah together, while using the same logic as it is by the esrog. Mistame have keilu pirshu, because we say that it's understood, that it's as if they specified that everybody is giving their part in the writing of the Sefer Torah. It's a yed neinim from kol, and they're giving it, and then that every individual of the community then could use the Sefer Torah and learn from it, and that when he learns from it, and then it's his. Amanas shiachziru lehem. So and then when he's done, he returns it to the community. Kidei as the Sefer Torah, uksivasa, the Sefer Torah and the writing of the Sefer Torah, sollen ganzen gehören zu him. It should belong completely to the one that is learning from it. Und können yaitze sein, the mitzvah von kisva goyme v'lamda goyme. And therefore you can fulfill the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah and learning from it individually. Even though it's a communal Sefer Torah, but the communal Sefer Torah is owned by everybody with the understood condition that when one takes the Sefer Torah to learn from it, he's learning from it as his own Sefer Torah. And then he returns it to the community for someone else to learn from it. So everybody has his own ownership in the writing and the learning of the Sefer Torah. The Yisayim is that furthermore, this is nita Sefer Torah shel shutfis. It's not considered to be a Sefer Torah of partnership, nor es is bisman adorish in ganzen seine milchat chile kidle kaman. In the time when he needs it, the Sefer Torah is totally his from the beginning, as will be explained here. In order to explain this, the Rebbe will first ask a question on the comparison between what we do regarding an esrog in a case where there isn't enough for everybody, and here, as we want to apply this, the same regarding a communal Sefer Torah. Is the Sabanit Kenteretz. This comparison, the way it's done with the esrog, is not an answer. What a Sefer Torah is not gleich to esrog. The way it is with the Sefer Torah cannot be compared to the esrog. By esrog is genug. When it comes to an esrog, to be yaitze the mitzvah, it's enough. As the esrog is konitzim, shaloi, that you own the esrog. That's the shaloi, it belongs to you. And the Rebbe held was the call is a makne the esrog, l'shas netilosai. And therefore it works that even though the esrog is bought and owned by the community, but all the people of the community are allowing you to acquire and own that esrog when you take it, the sheikh, to do the mitzvah with it. Mashenkin by Sefer Torah, which is not the case when it comes to a Sefer Torah, is nid genug as a zalhab ma Sefer Torah. By Sefer Torah, it's not enough that you own or have a Sefer Torah. No jeder muss ihr schreiben. Everyone must write a Sefer Torah. Whether you write it yourself or you hire a shliach, a scribe, to write the Sefer Torah for you. Because the father is their din, and therefore the halacha is of Sefer Torah. Even if your father left you a Sefer Torah, so you have a Sefer Torah that your father wrote. But nevertheless, mitzvah lichtov mishaloi. The mitzvah is to write your own Sefer Torah. On Nachmeh, furthermore, leitin Ramah, according to the Ramah's opinion, as quoted before, as afilu ven einer koift a Sefer Torah, even if you yourself bought your own Sefer Torah, but v'lehigia by dava, you didn't proofread it at all. You're grabbing a mitzvah that what someone else fulfilled, and you're grabbing it from the market, and you are not yetze your mitzvah. If so, the question here is, what will be accomplished here if there's an understanding rather that the Sefer Torah, which is being written as a communal Sefer Torah, that later each individual can take and use the Sefer Torah to read from it, and then it's his. Sof is das noch alt nicht besser wie kaufen allein a Sefer Torah. This is not better than when one buys a Sefer Torah that someone else wrote, and now you're buying it and it's completely yours, but nevertheless the Ramah says you're not Yetzer the mitzvah. So over here, if this is a Sefer Torah that wasn't written by you, it was written for a community, which is a different entity, it's not you. Even if it's with an understood deal, or it's the understanding here that you can then go and learn from it, and then when you learn from it, it's yours, but you're not Yetzer the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah for yourself. So to answer this is the Asbara Bazet explanation here, why we could compare it to the Esrig, and here there's another point. We're speaking about a communal Sefer Torah was belongs zum Tzibur, that belongs to the community. In such a case, when the community gets together to write a Sefer Torah, is doiv them their klal, we can apply here the rule that the Gemara says, as lev bezdin masna alein, that it's the understanding of the bezdin, the way Chazal designed it, for what should be accomplished here in this writing of the communal Sefer Torah, applies here automatically, even without them specifying this. The Gemara says this klal of lev bezdin masna alein, when it comes to a person that's makdish money, he donates money to hektish for one purpose, and there was money left over, and now they want to use it for something else, that you're allowed to use it for something else, because when a person dedicates his money to hektish, it's with the understanding that it's according to the bezdin, the community, then that the bezdin, the chazal, and the community that's taking care of the money of the hektish for what they see it fit to be used. So it's all being done with the understanding that we're following what chazal want. The same thing over here, the Leiv Bezdin Masna Aleim, that when people are donating the money to a communal Sefer Torah, it's with the understanding that it's based on the Lev Bezdin, the way Chazal designed it should be. And that's the conditions of this communal Sefer Torah. Das heißt, in other words, this means, as the Aknos a Sefer Torah, l'kol echad ve'echad, the fact that each individual from the community that is using the Sefer Torah, and it's then being acquired by him, is nit mitzad jeden yochid befrat. It's not because each individual of the community is allowing to give this person the rights and now the acquisition to use the Sefer Torah as his. It's not because of the individual. No, rather, Vayeilech bezdin masna. It's an understanding of bezdin, so to speak. It's understanding that this is the way Chachamim wanted it to be done. So therefore, when you donate to a communal Sefer Torah, that's why, because of the bezdin, it's a self-understood thing that each person has their own personal ownership in this Sefer Torah. So now, based on this, as their masna from Lev Bezdin, that the conditions of the donation of everybody in the community to such a Sefer Torah, benidin didan, in this case, is nitnar. It's not only as the Sefer Torah is zayin shalai, it's not only that when he learns from it, the Sefer Torah will be his, nor nachmer, furthermore, as oich the ksivis Torah is farim, that also the writing of the Sefer Torah will be for him. Gleich b'shas ksivis Torah. As soon as the Sefer Torah is beginning to be written, is lev bezdin masna. It's an understood condition based on what the bezdin designs. As the ksive is b'shlichus von jeden eine von dem kol. That what's being written there, when the scribe writes the Sefer Torah, he's writing it as a shlichus for every individual of the community that donated here, and he's writing it for him, that it should be his writing specifically for him. And that's expressed then by the fact that when he will need the Sefer Torah to learn from it, which today applies to when you get an aliyah at the Torah, is this an Sefer Torah, he's getting an aliyah and he's reading from a Sefer Torah that was written specifically for him, for this time period that he should be able to read from it. And so too for every individual Yid. The Sefer that's writing it, the understanding here is that it's being written for every individual Yid for that time when he will need it. So therefore it's not just at the time when he uses it that he has the acquisition and the ownership of the Sefer Torah, but it's the writing as well that's for him in the time that he needs it. And that you don't need an actual bezdin that should say this as a condition explicitly, dem Sefer v'schreibt the Sefer Torah, to say this explicitly to the scribe that's writing it. Because the concept of this being the conditions of the writing, the way it's applied in other places and the way it's applied here, is afile wenn jenem weiß nicht von dem und tracht nicht wegen dem. It's even if the scribe is not unaware of this and is not even thinking about this, but this is the understood das, the understood agreement of everybody that's doing this according to what the Chachamim designed. Wie me gefindt es beribe mekaimis. As this is applied in many places, this concept, uladugme, as one example for this, beim din, by the halacha that's right in the beginning of Masechtas Vachim, von Hashem shishu dvarim hazevach nizbach. When a carbon is brought, it has to be slaughtered, and the Vayeilech should be done, having in mind 6 things that it should be done properly. Even if one wasn't explicitly thinking about one of these 6 points, but nevertheless kosher, the aveda, the carbon is still kosher, shetnai bezdin, because even with a stam, without thinking about it explicitly, this is the conditions of the bezdin that the aveda in the Beis Hamikdash is done with this in mind. And therefore the same applies here, even if there is no bezdin that's explicitly telling this to the scribe writing the Sefer Torah. Okay, so now based on this, we can take this a step further and apply this to all of Klal Yisrael. Based on this, we can say even further. Even those individuals that were born after the Sefer Torah was written by the community, was the lev bezdin masna from shas aksiv is l'chayrin itchal v'yesh l'shak levatarya bezel. So seemingly in that case, the condition of the bezdin that you're writing it for all those people that participated in this communal Sefer Torah will not take effect for those people that are born later. The Rabbi adds that there's room for discussion about this. However, since as you must take out a Sefer Torah and check the Sefer Torah, proofread it to see that it's written all properly from time to time. And the halacha is that kol hamagia Sefer Torah va'afilo ois achas, one that proofreads the Sefer Torah, even just one letter, it's counted as if you wrote the whole Sefer Torah, because by proofreading it, you now ensure that it's a kosher Sefer Torah. Is yeshleimar, so therefore we could say, as l'chol adeyis, that according to all opinions, is lev bezdin masna, it's the condition of the bezdin, as the hagos, as Sefer Torah, that when the Sefer Torah is being proofread, soll verrechnet werden, wie ksivis as Sefer Torah, für die alle, welche seinen geboren geworden, wie giu lo'el mitzvahs, zwischen ksivis ha-Torah und der hagos. That for all those that were born later after the Sefer Torah was written, but now when it's being proofread, it's an understood condition that is being done for everyone of the community that's alive now and is after Bar Mitzvah now. And the same applies also to those that are born and those that are Bar Mitzvah between once you were Magia and another time that you were Magia. And it's being done for them in mind, for their sake, and therefore it's theirs, and they're Yetzer the Mitzvah with this. So according to this explanation, it comes out as that even those communities that only bought a Sefer Torah, as mentioned before, the Ramah says that buying, you're not Yetzer the Mitzvah, but is lev bezdin masne, but nevertheless you have here the condition of the bezdin as b'shas der hagov from Sefer Torah mizman lizman is das beschlichus von jeder bar chiyuve from the call, that it's being proofread and it's being done with a shlichus of every individual of the community, is a b'meila the mit mekayim mitzvahs ksivas Sefer Torah, and therefore everybody of the community fulfills with this his personal mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah. That's the explanation how we could compare this to the Esrig, and here by the Sefer Torah, the koyach of lev bezdin masne is that the Sefer is writing it for every individual yid of that community. There is another point here though that has to be clarified, because there's still something to be said that this cannot be compared to the Esrig. Is faran noch a chilik zwischen Esrig HaKohol and Sefer Torah HaKol. There's another distinction to be made between a communal Esrig and a communal Sefer Torah. The Achreinim sind machalik zwischen Sefer Torah shel shutfin and Esrig shel shutfin. As this is also explained already in Achreinim, that distinguish between a Sefer Torah owned by partners and an Esrig that's owned in partnership. Was euch by Esrig shel shutfin, even when it comes to a Esrig owned by partners, Paskin the Rambam, the Ramah says, as in kanu l'tzorech mitzvah, if they bought it for the sake of a mitzvah, yotzim b'im mistama, all the partners could be yotze even without specifying. Und man darf nicht äußern befeirisch, as men gibt es zum zweiten Schutte v'matona al-manas la'achzer. When you allow one partner to use, you don't have to specify that it's being given as a gift in order with the intention or with the condition to return. It's understood that this is the agreement that they bought it, so everyone has a personal ownership when he uses it. So here's the distinction that Achreinim say that we can see between a communal Esrig and a communal Sefer Torah. By Esrig, helft matana manas lahachzer. When it comes to an esrig, it will work when one of the partners or one of the community uses the esrig, and this is with the condition that he will return it. Hayes as the esrig dav zayin shaloi blois b'shas netilase. Since in the case of an esrig, it only has to be his at the time when he's shaking the lulav an esrig. Which is not the case when it comes to a Sefer Torah. It's necessary to have the Sefer Torah to learn from it, to have it available to learn from it all the time. Help us nit ken matana amanas lahachser. So here, to give it as a gift with the condition that you return it then to the community should not be enough. Because when you give it now to someone else to learn from it, so you do not have that Sefer Torah constantly available to learn from. Here, the point of the mitzvah is to have it all the time available to learn from. However, this distinction is not true. And the reason is, this distinction between the communal Sefer Torah and an esrig, when the ikra limud is given in a Sefer Torah. This is only in earlier generations when then they would actually learn primarily from the Sefer Torah, and therefore the fulfillment of the mitzvah of the writing of the Sefer Torah, the lamda, to learn from it, is to have it available all the time to learn from it. However, regarding the Sefer Torah in our times, so today, what do we learn from a Sefer Torah? In actuality, according to the custom, the ikir in them was kaidem b'barabim. It's primarily when you read from it, from the Sefer Torah on a Shabbos, Yom Tov, and so on. It's b'meilu verstandig. If so, it's understood. As afilu leiti deis, even according to the opinions. As miznit yaitze, gam laharash, the mitzvah, blois mitzvarim. That even according to the Rosh that says that today the mitzvah is to buy Sfarim, but it's not only Sfarim, it's in addition to a Sefer Torah. Man muss euch schreiben a Sefer Torah. You must write a Sefer Torah as well. Is aber nicht kein chiyuv, as the Sefer Torah soll sein, tachas yadoi, b'chol eis, b'chol shah. This is not an obligation that you must have the Sefer Torah available to you at all times, because that's not the way we use the Sefer Torah today. And as far as learning all times is concerned, for that, when it comes to the Sefer Torah, so then it's enough that you have the ability to access and use the Sefer Torah when you have an aliyah, and then it's yours. And regarding learning all the time, for that you have all of the svarim that we write today to fulfill the mitzvah. Another detail that could be added over here in this explanation, that we are all yotze the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah with a communal Sefer Torah. A Sefer Torah shall call is anders via Sefer Torah shall shutfin. A communal Sefer Torah is different than a Sefer Torah that's owned in partnership. By a Sefer Torah shall shutfin, when it comes to a Sefer Torah that's owned by partners, is the chalukas a Sefer Torah zwischen sei talui in das a shutfin. So here, the way this is going to be split between them, how and when they're going to use it, that will depend on the agreement between these partners, whatever they make up, whatever they decide. So then, here this would be a problem. Because since to learn does not have a specific time, unlike the esrig, which is one time a day to shake the lulav and esrig, so therefore it can't be said as Yitzim boim mistame valadaite the hachi the shutfim geschrieben the Sefer Torah, that these shutfim are going to be Yitzim, the partners will be Yitzim their mitzvah even if there's nothing that was specified, because they wrote it for this purpose to have it available for them to use. That one will give it to the other partner to use on condition that he returns it in the time when he wants to learn it, because it has to be available all times. Aber befragt, as es kann sein, as beide wollen lernen in dem Sefer Torah in demselben Zman. It's possible that they both will want to learn from the Sefer Torah at the same time. And even if they don't mamish need it all available at the same time, as the minig is with the Sefer Torah today, that it's only when you have an aliyah, but nevertheless, there isn't one specific time when you read from the Sefer Torah, and that's it, like it is with the esrei, the mitzvah is once a day, and you're yaitze. But over here, though, you can read from the Sefer Torah, you can get an aliyah in different times of the day. So if it's different times in the day, and if both partners want to have use the Sefer Torah to read from it in the shul at the same time, so then how could you say that even if it wasn't specified, it's understood that they will each have the right to use it when they wish? However, when it comes to a communal Sefer Torah, this is a Sefer Torah that's bought and owned by the community in order to use it to read in the shul berabim. So over here, there's no reason to make any conditions. This is based on the conditions that it's being done according to what Bezdin, the Chazal, have ascribed it should be done in. As B'shas, Yeder is Eilul Torah, is the Sefer Torah Zaina, that when whoever it is getting the Aliyah at the Torah and is reading from it, so now this is his Sefer Torah Shaloi, or Nachmer, and not only that the Sefer Torah now is his, as the Ksivus HaTorah is given for him, that the Sefer Torah was written for him, for this moment that he needs it. In order for him to have the ability to fulfill with this the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah. That's how every single Yid fulfills the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah. Al-Pi Kolanal, based on all of this, Kemen Zogin, we can now explain, as al derech zeh, haben Yidden mekayim gewend the mitzvah from Ksivus Sefer Torah bepam rishona. This is how Yidden fulfilled the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah the first time when, on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, when they got the mitzvah to write the Sefer Torah. Wie bald, das ist gewend als man, was ist gewend min nimna, as jeder Yid soll können anschreiben a Sefer Torah la'atzmai. Since it was a time that it was impossible that every single Yid should write a Sefer Torah for himself. Ubefrat, and especially, as v'lamdo, die mekayim zeh mitzvahs, hebt sich von a chodesh hazeh gomer. To write that portion of the Sefer Torah, which includes all the mitzvahs, to learn from it, you have to write starting from a chodesh hazeh lachem. Hat Moshe Rabbeinu geschrieben, farzei, Yud Gimel Sifrei Torah. This is the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu wrote for Yidden 13 Sifrei Torah, which is a Sefer Torah for Yidden Shevet, that included the 12 Sifrei Torah, one Sefer Torah for every Shevet. Then is a given Sifrei Torah shal kohol. So this was communal Sefer Torahs for each Shevet. Ubemele lev bezdin masna alein, as b'shas jedere vet lernen von der Sefer Torah hat melechatchila Moshe Rabbeinu for im geschriebene Sefer Torah. So here we have the condition of the bezdin that is being written for whoever it is that's learning from the Sefer Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu was writing it from the beginning for him, for the one that's learning the Sefer Torah when he needs it. And that's how everybody's fulfilling their mitzvah. And furthermore, we could say, as das gufa is the tam, this itself is the reason for was that tzivui of ksivus Sefer Torah is given b'matzav kazeh, that the mitzvah of writing the Sefer Torah was in such a kind of situation as in jenes man is nit given ken of sharius, as jeder Yid soll mekayim sein mitzvah saksive, nor seiten mit der Sefer Torah shal kohol, that it was impossible for everyone to write their own Sefer Torah, and they could only do the mitzvah by a communal Sefer Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote for the whole Shevet. Why was it in the first time that they fulfilled the mitzvah done in this way? This is showing us and demonstrating to us how this is done in future generations. As b'shas hamatzah, velach is b'rib b'shanim. As nit jeder Yid can schreiben a Sefer Torah la'atzmai, is the mitzvah lechatchila as mizir mekayim mit a Sefer Torah shal kol. That when there's a situation and we see that over many years, not everybody is able to write a Sefer Torah for himself, so then how is the mitzvah fulfilled? And l'chatchila, fulfilled 100% fully, that's when it's written for the entire community, and it's being written for every individual, that when he learns from it, it's his Sefer Torah that he fulfills the mitzvah with this. From everything that we explained here, is euch verstandig, an additional point is understood here, der Geudel ha'inyan from keine sein an eis in a Sefer Torah shall call. The great idea of buying a letter in a Sefer Torah that's written by a community. Why is this? Because then you'll take part and fulfill the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah, not only as explained because of the condition of the Bezdin that it's being written for everybody, but this is Mayil Kanal, and this does work fully as explained. And that's even when you don't participate in actually buying a letter because it's being written for the community. Here, additionally, there's an additional advantage that there's an action that you're doing with your money, that you're paying and taking part, participating in the expenses of this Sefer Torah being written for the community that you're a part of. Then it's definitely not grabbing someone else's mitzvah from the marketplace. Nor ki'ilu kibloi mahar sinai. The expression that the Rambam or the Gemara says that then it's a Sefer Torah that you wrote and you are receiving it now at Har Sinai. Und durch dem, was alle Yidden wollen haben, an Eisen Sefer Torah. And by the fact that we see to it that all Yidden should have a letter in the Sefer Torah. Was Mitzvahs Sefer Torah is the seal von alle Taryag Mitzvahs. The mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah is the last and the conclusion of all of the 613 mitzvahs. That men bekor of mamish zeiche sein, we will very speedily merit. So the Msiyam HaGol is the conclusion of the Golas, Golas saying, was all Yidden gehen reis von them, this exile that all Yidden leave it, bebias Mashiach tzedkenu, with the arrival of our righteous Mashiach, was wird schreiben Mishnah Torah, and Mashiach being a king will write a second Sefer Torah, l'shem hamelech, as the halacha is that a king writes for himself a second Sefer Torah, v'lachiyeh imay tamid chulu, that's with him constantly, shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'hoisa imay, that the second Sefer Torah is with him all the time, v'karabai, and he reads from it, kol yemei chayav, in his entire lifetime.